Welcome to Alma Matters, our new podcast that brings in leading minds from all over the world to share their real-world wisdom. In our first episode, I'm really thrilled that we can welcome Professor Milena Kralíčková, the rector of Charles University. Milena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, you are the first female rector of Charles University in its almost 700 years, right? You also presided, though, and I have to ask you about this, during one of the worst crises and tragedies at Charles University during the 2023 shooting. There's a lot of research recently about women leading differently through crises. Jacinta Ardern, for example, during the New Zealand COVID pandemic was particularly praised for leading with empathy and transparency. Do you think there's something different about women leading through crisis?
I actually think so. And as you said, it was really clearly and nicely visible during COVID pandemia, where the prime ministers were women and were leading the countries a little bit different way. I really think the important word for women leadership is empathy. And I believe that this is something that we should value in the comparison with other kinds of leaderships. I'm a leader who likes when the academics around really participate in the leadership. But even though I believe it's a strength, it also brings a lot of challenges.
And I wonder if, I think in academia, it can be particularly difficult to bring everyone together. At the same time, you have the brightest minds in the same room. So it's important that we're all working towards the same goal. I guess there's a balance that we, in a world that is still more dominated by men, that we can show that we can be at the helm, while also bringing perhaps some of the strengths that we have as women leaders. But on the tragedy at Charles and the shooting itself, can you tell us a little bit more about what you learned through that as leading through those difficult times?
Actually, when the tragedy struck Charles University, there was also a woman that led the Faculty of Arts, Eva Lehečková, Dr. Eva Lehečková, who was the dean and who is the dean. And actually, the fact that we both were at that time aiming the same direction to really take care of the academic, of all the academics, of all the students, to think of the people in the first row. That was, I think, the important thing that was uniting me and Leva Lehečková at that time. It's still about people, in fact. We'll be in December remembering already 2 years since that tragedy, but it's still about the people. And when I look into the academics and students at our university, I see that the wounds are not healed. And we shouldn't be afraid to speak about it. As I mentioned when we were speaking together before, some people, and I understand it, are hesitating to speak about the things, but I think we should. And I'm really happy that we are in touch with parents who lost their kids on December 23rd, 2023, and that we can help as Charles University, for example, to promote a beautiful book of poems that was written by one of the victims, Lucie Frýbertová. It's called in Czech Vlčí poezie, so I don't know, in English I would say wolf poems.
Wolf poetry?
Wolf poetry. It's an amazing book of really great poetry that is stunning me every time I open the book. And a very similar thing that I think should be promoted is a new book that will be soon at Charles University promoted by Dora Čechová, who's mother of one of the girls who was hardly wounded. But she's recovering. The name of the book is Teresko vrať se, Teresko come back. And I think this is the way we should remember. We should praise those people who were able to take care of the kids, to take care of the people, and we shouldn't be silent. We shouldn't stay in the silence. We should be able to talk about it.
And I think this is really important because, and I want to ask you about resilience just in a second, but when I was reading about one of the latest books, the Resilience book by Sadig, Dr. Charney and colleagues, they say actually avoidance is one of the biggest obstacles to achieving resilience and a biggest factor in rising levels of anxiety, etc. So we have to figure out ways to move forward without forgetting, without sort of pretending things didn't happen. And it's amazing that you were able to really rise up to such a difficult challenge. And one of the things that you've done following is founding the Center of Resilience. And I think this is particularly important for our younger generations. We see the rising levels of stress in the classroom. At the same time, we don't want resilience to become just a buzzword. So what does it mean to you? How do we make sure it's not just a buzzword?
The Center of Resilience was, as you said, established a few months after the tragedy. And I'm really happy we had international help. Because, to be honest, at first, we knew we want to take care of students and academics, but we didn't know how. And we had big support in the beginning from Ministry of Interior, from a psychologist that came with police and medical care. So the first 2-3 months, the help from the government was really good. But then the government kind of said, well, now it's not the acute phase anymore. Take care for your people further. So we asked for international helps. And the international help from people from Utøya, Norway, really showed us a way. We had a Norwegian grant that helped us to create a Center of Resilience, and we still are communicating with them, visiting them, and communicating with them how to provide the long-term support. And we see that in Norway there is a government-supported research, a long-term research that shows what kind of actions are helping in the long term to really support people who survived such a tragical thing like Utøya was, or the attack on Faculty of Arts was in Czech Republic. And I have to always thank to Norwegian colleagues, and I already said it to the ambassador, and anytime I can express it, I really say it, because when you don't do this, when you don't take this long-term care, then these people who were affected really suffer and can end up in very tragical ways, which is shown, for example, after the terroristic attacks in Brussels, that plenty of the people who were unfortunately wounded or affected at that attacks and didn't the support from the society, and that they really had really serious and tragical consequences after the attacks psychologically. So we really want to take care of our people, and Center of Resilience, I think, is a concrete preventive and supportive structure.
Well, it's sort of hard to imagine that after such tragic events in some countries or in some societies, people are just sort of left to fend for themselves. But you're right that as a society, we don't always know how to react, how to support people who have survived events like these. I'm wondering, though, the Center of Resilience, what is your vision for the future of it, not just after traumatic events, but just is the idea to boost resilience among the student body and with colleagues as well?
We definitely have to, because as you also said, young people these days have plenty of challenges that are new and that are serious. It's a geopolitical, it's a local political, and it's plenty of things that every day strikes their minds. We want to support a much stronger preventive care, to give them supportive psychological instruments, if I can say it this way, that would help them to cope with the stress when they meet it. Plus, we're increasing the number of interventions, and there is a need already. And we also created kind of religious center joined with no certain religion, but we call it Center that cares for the soul, or Center for the Soul. That's where we have people from our all three theological faculties. You know, Charles University has three theological faculties: Catholic, Protestant, and Hussites. And people from all these three faculties joined together in the Center for Care of the Soul. So these are our ways how we want to go and proceed, and we know we have to strengthen it, because young people will need it.
That's really fascinating, actually, because the Dr. Savik and Charney books that I mentioned on resilience just a second ago, one of the 10 factors that boost resilience that they find is spirituality. Although they don't spend that much time on the book, because I think in this day and age it's difficult to grapple with. And but spirituality isn't just religiosity. It's sense of wonder, sense of awe, which of course in the beautiful buildings of Charles University that helps foster the wonder in your students and colleagues. But it's, I think, really important that we offer a sort of toolkit for resilience. We do some stress resilience training, following Meichenbaum's idea of stress inoculation, that you can sort of vaccinate yourself against stress, but you need the long-term approach that you mention as well. I wanted to go back a little bit to this idea of us women in the leadership positions before I stop talking about gender. There are 45 universities and 45 rectors. We are 7 women in those leadership positions. That can be stressful as well. But I'm wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about, apart from what we've just talked about, some of the other challenges as a woman in a leadership position that you've encountered.
In fact, and I'm not sure if you feel the same way. For example, when we are there together with in the Czech Rectors Conference, where the majority of the members are male, they have a certain kind of communication, and they have the certain kind of events that they bring them together somehow. And this is important. We, of course, try to be part of that, but unfortunately, this is a kind of thing that always annoys me a little bit, that this is not easy for women to be part of the ways how men are sometimes in these kind of bodies interacting. Similar is sometimes with politicians. Not all politicians really have the same respect to, for example, women rectors as males. So we definitely need more women in Czech Rectors Conference, and we need more women in politics. I mean, in fact, I'm really happy about the elections that we just had in Czech Republic. That one thing I believe is positive, that finally we have 1/3 of women in our parliament, and let's hope it's going to rise even in future. But this is a really good thing about these elections. Much more women in politics gradually.
And that was a really good campaign in the elections, actually, was whatever party you voted with. There was a campaign to encourage us to circle the women on the ballot papers. And I think that's worked really well, where even if you don't know who's actually on there, you don't have a very strong preference, you can support women. And so we're going towards equality. We're not necessarily talking about I feel like sometimes there is this idea that is a sort of the battle of the sexes, or if we start helping each other as women in leadership, it's somehow a threat to our male colleagues. But it's not. And as you say, male colleagues will also have their traditional ways of getting together. So I think we as women in leadership roles have to support each other. So I'm wondering, I mean, I really want this podcast to bring in sort of some practical tips as well, based on the wisdom of the guests. What would you say to, especially to young women and sort of in leadership roles, whether in academia or elsewhere, maybe one tip that you wish you'd told yourself, that you'd known earlier?
My one tip would be, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. Help the other women too. Because, I like to mention Madeleine Albright. I loved her, and I really always love to cite her words when she says there is a place in hell for women that do not help other women. And I think if you're, for example, a very young doctor and you don't think you can help anybody, but you still have your students, and some of the students will be women. So in any step of your career, you can really help the women around you, or the women next to you, or I don't know how to express it. So this would be my tip. It always helped me. And at each of the levels in academia I served, I really always try to do it. When I led the Department of Histology and Embryology back in our Faculty of Medicine in Pilsen, which belongs to Charles University, I was one of the first of the bosses, of the leaders of the departments, who really wanted to give part-time jobs to the researchers that were at the maternity leave. And it really is now something that is normal. I'm really happy I started it because it really showed and proved that women who are researchers on maternity leave, they want to be back. They want to be part of the life. They want to do their research. And they were really effective, not, for example, by standing in the lab and really working with the tubes, but they were a really important part of the team when they got the chance. So my tip would be, in any step of your career, just help the women around you.
I think that's wonderful. And I think especially important in the Czech context. So when we were doing our gender equality plan, we had a consultant come in and help us. And she said, it's sort of customary, it's assumed that when women go on maternity leave in the workplace, especially if they have more children, they can be gone for 10 years. And that's changing, obviously, but we have, I think, the longest maternity leave in Europe. So there's an expectation that they won't be involved or perhaps won't even come back. And this consultant had an example of a woman who wanted to come back after maternity, and the company had moved and didn't tell her, and just sort of forgot about her. And I think it's really important that we bring in that kind of more flexible working conditions, ways that you can be involved, because you don't want to just lose touch with the intellectual community because you're on maternity leave, etc. So I think that's really important. I think it's all a part of a picture that I think you're doing amazingly, is bringing the kind of international experiences into the Czech education sector. One of the kind of more perhaps depressing statistics is that 35 years or so after the Velvet Revolution, we're still below average in the OECD in terms of tertiary educational attainment. I'm wondering, why do you think that is with your experience?
Well, I think we need to bring into this sector of education more support from the government. And I believe we really need new Higher Education Act. I'm happy we had this last year improvement. For example, for our PhD students at all universities, it's important. But more financial support and a modern Higher Education Act, I think, can help us a little bit to boost.
And what do you think specifically in terms of perhaps making it more international, more modern, more innovative?
Yes.
What's missing?
I think a little bit of the flexibility in the Higher Education Act, the flexibility. For example, I'm happy that the change of the Higher Education Act that we have in place now finally helped us to move the students between the study programs. Because all over the world, I think the flexibility between study programs was traditionally higher. Here in Czech Republic, you choose a study program. If you don't want it, you end it, you go into a new one. But in plenty of other countries, you can just skip from one study program to next one, to skip between the programs. It's something that we need. I'm happy that with the current new higher education change of the Higher Education Act, this is already possible. But this will take time. The universities to start to use it. The students get to be used to this fact, to this possibility. So we need more flexibility, and for that, I believe a completely new Higher Education Act could help to really bring into the system more of the 21st century, I would say.
And you're right. We were involved. We were at the table, at least during the last reform. But I completely agree. There's a lot of things missing that can really help move our education sector into the 21st century and make it more open to internationalization as well. And there are a lot of international students, of course, at Charles. What's your experience? What is their role in helping to make the education sector more innovative?
You mentioned it, or you said it, in fact, in the more innovation, that's what it brings. Like, we at Charles University have 20% of international students, and actually half of them studies in Czech. So these are the students from Ukraine, Bulgaria, or Poland, and half of them studies in English. Students from, I would say, all over the world. More than 110 countries are at Charles University in the English study program. So 10% of Charles University students study in English. And they really bring, from the cultural point of view, from the many point of views, different experience. And that brings, that sparkles. I don't know how to express it better. It sparkles the students around at Charles University. We really try to offer Czech students Erasmus possibilities. I'm happy that Charles University is very successful in Erasmus program, and we belong in 10 of the best universities in Erasmus program when you look at the numbers. But still we cannot offer Erasmus experience to everybody. So that's why we really need international experience at home. And I believe into the internationalization at home. And I'm so happy Prague is so beautiful that the university is in Prague.
Yeah.
It helps. We all really have plenty of students who want to be here and who want to study here. And we all are offering them, I think, really good student experience. I believe we should continue in that.
And I think this is really important. It's one of our biggest priorities as well. And you can't really have innovation without that kind of diversity of life experiences. And the NERV Advisory Board a couple of years ago has said as well that we need more international students. We need to bring more talent into the country, but also figure out ways to encourage them to stay in the country, contribute to the labor market, get integrated into Czech society. What's your experience with students at Charles who are international, who are staying? There are about 45% on average of international students that actually stay and get integrated into the labor market. Most of them will be Slovaks, though, from our sister nation. So those are not necessarily international, non-EU students who speak English, etc. And even with our international students, we know they find it harder to find part-time jobs while they study, to integrate into the labor market. What can we do to maybe encourage this?
This is a difficult question. As you said, I believe those students who are international students studying in Czech, plenty of them stay. And exactly the numbers you said, it looks like approximately half of the international students are those who study in Czech, for example, at Charles University. And I believe these are staying. A lot of them are staying. For those who study in English, Prague is a convenient place. Plenty of companies here do offer the possibility of working in English, but it's much worse when you look into other cities. Charles University has a medical faculty in Pilsen and faculty of medicine and faculty of pharmacy in Hradec. And I see there are plenty of international students studying medicine, but it's much more difficult for them to find the opportunities in English there. So definitely I would, and I believe it will change, that our society will be more English speaking, offering more opportunities for the part-time jobs and for other types of work and other types of engagement with the society. And we are actually lucky in Prague that the opportunities here are more, but we should focus on that even in other cities. In Pilsen, there is also a West Bohemian University, which has a great potential to have much more of international students. They have great study programs, extremely interesting and very good material science, and plenty of other examples. So we should definitely support that. And I think the government should help us to support it because, we're still facing problems with the government of interior and government of foreign affairs. And I believe that this should change, and hopefully it will change, so we can attract talents that are plenty of time still staying behind the borders of Czech Republic because of issues that, administrative issues, I would say.
I know, I couldn't agree more. And despite the recommendations to welcome more international students, we also encounter a lot of, visa administrative issues for students, especially from non-EU countries who really want to come and study. And most of the European countries differentiate between student migration and the rest of migration types. And I think that's one thing that we need to bring in here, where people want to come, bring in their ideas, their talent, they want to study. And we should definitely be more welcoming of that. Well, we're talking about all of these, different things, the role of resilience, the role of diversity, the role of experiences, maybe beyond the classroom. Coming sort of towards a wrap-up of our podcast today, if you think towards 2040, for example, what would Charles ideally look like? Maybe what's changed there at the university?
I would love to see more international academics and more international students. We have mentioned that already, but the more international academics is also really important part. It was 10 years ago, it was much harder because there were not many faculties that were teaching in English. It was mainly faculty of medicine, but For example, a teacher who would come here to our Faculty of Mathematics and Physics 10 years ago would not have the possibility to teach the whole study program. It's changing, and I'm really proud to say that most of our faculties, even Faculty of Law, have study programs in English. So the teacher who comes from anywhere in the world can really be full-blooded academics with teaching experience in English and international students. And I think and I hope that in future it will be much more clear that academia will be much more full in Charles University with international colleagues and researchers, and that we will definitely be able to attract even more European projects than we can so far. This is something that is important for the whole Czech Republic. We see that as Czech Republic, we were not sufficiently using Horizon Europe and the Framework Program 9 programs. And this is something that I believe should change, and I hope it will.
Well, we think of ourselves as a country of innovators, and I think we are, but international, academic research is by definition international. So I think we have to encourage that. I completely agree. And I hope it does look like that in 2040, all the universities in the Czech Republic. Well, Milena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. And we heard today about the leadership experiences of Professor Milena Kralíčková. In the next episodes, we're going to welcome more leaders from the world of academia, as well as expert scholars who can share their experiences, really going back to the sort of practical wisdom that you can use in your daily life. So stay curious, and I'll see you next time.